Hey, everybody. It is Mark Sasser, and you have found the High Country Journal podcast. This is going to be a relaunch of my original podcast, the Western Tradbow Hunters podcast. I took a couple-year break. Reason being, I was traveling a lot for work, and I could record these when I was out of town in a hotel, and it didn't take up family time, and it gave me something to do. And it just got to be cumbersome with my job. But now I'm back on the road quite a bit, and I've got time to do these. So here we are. I rebranded it to be the High Country Journal because through the process of writing Alone Against the Mountains, I really did realize I was journaling a lot over the last 30 years. And I had a lot to say, which I put in the book, which you can find on Amazon in three forms. There's a Kindle version, a paperback, and a hardback. You can also find it on safaritup.com. So if you're buying arrows over there, some taipans or old schools or whatever you're getting, go ahead and pick up the book and they'll add it on there. You can also get it from threeriversarchery.com. Same thing. If you're buying something at Three Rivers and you don't have the book, just add one in there and pick it up. I appreciate it and it helps. But through writing that, a lot of people started asking questions. You know, the book is about what happens when you spend time alone hunting in the backcountry, to your personality, the way that you view life and relationship, friendships, marriages, how, the solitude of 20 years of hunting alone just changes you. What it doesn't answer is how do you do it? So the project I'm working on now is just that. It is the how do you do these things and, what's important to be able to become a solo backpack hunter. So through my journals, we're gonna go through some current projects I'm working on. We'll have we'll look at backpacks. We'll look at food. We'll look at hunting with the traditional bow. But I don't want this to be trad bow only because what I do works for compound guys, rifle guys, fly fishermen, anybody who wants to go off trail in a wilderness in the high country. Anybody that wants to do those things can find something to connect with what we're going to be talking about. And then, I've already got a couple of friends that I want to have them come on and talk about their experiences as well. So this will be the podcast. Again, the High Country Journals. And what I want to do now is I'm going to read you a piece that I'm working on for my next book, which I've been working on it pretty much since I finished the first book. I think this might even be a stronger book. It's going to have a lot of hows and whys, which I did not answer in the first one. And so it starts with this, like, what does it take to be a solo backpack hunter? And I'm going to read you this article. And then when I'm done with it, we will jump in and talk a little bit about what it means. So I don't have a solid title for it right now, but I think it's going to be called something, like It Begins with a Backpack. I say that several times over during this chapter. So let's get right to it and follow along. What do you need to become a solo hunter in the wilderness? It begins with a backpack. Few expect that answer, though it has always been true. Since the release of Alone Against the Mountains, I have been asked countless times how I hunt alone for days at a time in California's high country. The questions usually revolve around bows, broadheads, spotting deer, how I pack meat out of places that seem impossibly remote. Those are all important questions, but they are rarely the first ones that need to be answered. Instead, I return that question. What is your experience level as a backpacker? Often there's a pause. Some offer uneasy smiles. mentioning day hikes or camping trips with friends. A few quietly admit that they have never spent a night alone in the mountains. They expect me to begin talking about hunting, but I do not. The truth is plain. Before you can hunt alone in the high country, you have to learn to carry your life on your back. It starts with a backpack. It always has. The truth has not changed since long before I was born. It certainly was not new when John Muir shoulders his own pack and wandered into the Sierra Nevada with little more than curiosity, endurance, and a desire to know the wild places more intimately. Muir once wrote, "The mountains are calling, and I must go." Those words have become famous because they capture something many of us feel. Even so, they also leave out the practical side of the journey. Before he could answer that call, he had to carry everything he needed on his back. Every mile he walked taught him another lesson about simplicity, suffering, and self-reliance. More than a century has passed, but the lesson remains unchanged. The gear has changed: bows, packs, water filters, sleeping bags, even the way we find our way. But the mountains don't care. They ask the same questions now that they did in Muir's day. Can you carry your life on your back? If the answer is no, little else matters. People often imagine solo backpack hunting as one skill, but I see it as three disciplines woven together. First, you must become a competent backpacker. Second, you must become an effective bow hunter. Third, you must become capable of carrying an animal after the shot. From the field, butchering, to preparing wild game that sustains your body as well as spirit. Remove any one of these three skills and the entire system begins to fall apart. Backpacking comes first because it makes everything else possible. If you cannot comfortably backpack for 5 days, you cannot backpack bow hunt for 5 days. There is no shortcut for that lesson. The encouraging news is that it does not take years to learn. Many people overestimate how difficult it is and underestimate how quickly they can improve if they follow a logical progression. A person with little experience can absolutely become capable of hunting the backcountry within a year. The key is building confidence one step at a time instead of trying to leap from the trailhead straight into a 10-day wilderness hunt. The mountains are indifferent to excitement. They reward only those who prepare. Every spring, as the snow begins to retreat from the high country and the trails slowly reopen, another opportunity presents itself. Long before hunting season arrives, the wilderness quietly opens its classroom once again. That is where your education should begin. Not after you draw a tag, not a week before opening day, months before an arrow ever leaves the string. Start with a single overnight trip. Some people have never spent a night alone outside. That first experience is often more intimidating than they expect. There are unfamiliar sounds. The darkness seems deeper. Every snapping twig seems louder than it really is. Your mind begins inventing stories that daylight would immediately dismiss. Those emotions are perfectly normal. Every experienced backpacker remembers their first night somewhere. Load your backpack with the basics: food, fire, shelter, water purification, extra clothing, navigation, a sleep system. Then choose a destination 5 to 10 miles from the trailhead. Hike in, set your camp. Watch the evening fall upon the mountains. Listen to the creek. Cook dinner. Crawl into your sleeping bag. Wake with the sunrise. Drink your coffee while the granite slowly turns gold in the sunrise light. Then shoulder your pack and hike home. You have crossed a threshold that separates the uncertain from the willing. You have stepped into a place many never reach. You have shown yourself that you can be relied upon. That lesson is worth more than any number of miles walked. Once you've completed that first overnight, ask yourself a simple question. Did I enjoy it? Not every moment will be easy. Backpacking is rarely comfortable. Feet ache, shoulders tire, mosquitoes test patience. Afternoon storms remind even the seasoned that the mountains are in charge. Yet, under those hardships, there is a gentle gratification. If you find yourself thinking about the next trip before your pack is even empty, you are beginning to understand why some of us return to these wild places year after year. The next step is a 3-day loop. Leave on a Friday, hike roughly 5 miles, and camp. Wake the next morning and hike another 5 miles to an entirely different camp. On Sunday, complete the loop and hike back to your vehicle. Now, you're no longer practicing simply carrying a pack. You're learning how to live out of it. Every morning you pack your camp. Every evening you build another one. You begin developing routines. You discover where everything belongs inside your backpack. You realize what equipment you've never touched and what you reached for constantly. Efficiency slowly replaces uncertainty. You also begin learning something much deeper. The wilderness moves to its own rhythm. By the third morning, you no longer feel like a visitor. The forest begins feeling familiar. You wake with a light instead of an alarm clock. You notice the direction of the wind without thinking. You recognize where water collects and how afternoon clouds build over the ridges. These observations are the foundation of becoming a hunter. Before you can read deer sign, you must first learn to read the mountains themselves. John Muir understood that, perhaps better than anyone. He famously wrote, "In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks." That sentence has become another famous quotation, but I don't believe he was talking about scenery. Muir understood that wilderness slowly reshapes those willing to spend enough time within it. The lessons cannot be hurried. They arrive quietly, one sunrise, one campfire at a time. The same is true for hunters. My own experiences in the Sierra have taught me that the greatest lessons often happen when no animal ever appears. Some of the most meaningful trips I've taken ended without filling a tag. Yet I came home rich because the mountain showed me something regarding patience, humility, perseverance, and even myself. Day 4 has become especially meaningful to me. I've written before that something changes when you've been alone long enough. The excitement settles, the distractions fade. Whatever you're carrying emotionally begins resurfacing. Backpacking teaches you how to sit quietly with those thoughts. Hunting gives those lessons a purpose. That's another reason I encourage people to reach 5 days before attempting a serious backpack hunt. Once you've completed a 3-day trip, the next goal is the 5. By then, you have moved beyond the novelty of backpacking. You are no longer proving you can survive outside. You are learning how to live well in wild country. People often ask, what size backpack should I buy? As a starting point, I recommend roughly 1,000 cubic inches of pack space for each day you expect to spend in the wilderness. As you gain experience and begin replacing heavier equipment with lighter, more efficient gear, that number can shrink somewhat. But for someone beginning their journey, 1,000 cubic inches per day is a practical guideline. Weight follows a similar pattern. A good rule of thumb is roughly 10 pounds per 1,000 cubic inches of pack space. That means an overnight trip might require a pack weighing around 20 pounds. A 3-day trip may weigh about 30. 5 days might bring you closer to 40 or 50, depending on the availability of equipment, food, and water. The important thing is understanding where that weight comes from. Your shelter doesn't double simply because your trip is longer. Neither does your stove, your sleeping bag, or your water filter. Once you've reached 5 days, you're primarily adding food, maybe another pair of socks, an extra layer if conditions require. Your system becomes surprisingly efficient. That realization changes everything. You stop viewing the backpack as a burden. Instead, it becomes a form of freedom. Everything you need exists inside that single pack. Home rests upon your shoulders. So does freedom. So does wildness. That independence breeds a quiet confidence, one that cannot be explained until it's lived. Somewhere between the trailhead and your 5th sunrise, you stop worrying about what was left behind and begin to value what you carry. That mindset eventually carries over into hunting. By the time opening morning arrives, you're no longer thinking about your tent, your stove, or whether you'll make it through the week. Those concerns have already been solved through months of backpacking experience. Now your attention belongs entirely to the animals, the wind, the terrain, and the hunt itself. The backpack has quietly done its work. When readers tell me they want to hunt the way I describe in Alone Against the Mountains, I appreciate the compliment. But what they're really describing is a lifestyle that extends well beyond hunting season. Those September mornings are built during April backpack trips. They're developed through June weekends. They are strengthened with every summer mile walked beneath a loaded pack. The hunt itself is only the visible portion of the journey. Everything else came before it. Sometimes I think about John Muir walking these same mountains, not with a bow in his hands, but with the same willingness to immerse himself completely in wild country. We've approached the Sierra differently, yet we've arrived at many of the same conclusions. The wilderness is not to be conquered. It is entered respectfully. It teaches those willing to listen. It wipes away unnecessary things until what remains is honest. For Muir, that honesty revealed a more intense awareness of nature. For me, it has also revealed a heightened understanding of hunting. Neither begins with a weapon. Both begin with a backpack. If someone said to me today, I want to hunt the high country alone next season, I wouldn't hand them a bow. I wouldn't recommend broadheads. I wouldn't even start talking about deer. I'd tell them to buy a good backpack. Then I'd tell them to find a trail, walk 5 or 10 miles and spend the night alone tucked away against a mountain. Wake up with the sunrise. Walk home and reflect on the experience. If you are still committed, then you have passed the first real test. Do it again for 3 days, and then 5. Somewhere along that journey, you'll realize something noticeable has happened. You're no longer preparing to become a backpack hunter. You've already become a backpacker. Everything else, the stalking, the shot, the butchering, the campfire meals, the heavy packouts, the memories that linger for decades grow from that foundation. It all begins with the backpack. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson the mountains continue teaching us. Whether we walk them carrying a journal like John Muir or a traditional bow as I do, the equipment matters. The destination matters. The success of the hunt certainly matters. But before any of those things, before the first bugle echoes across a basin or a velvet antlered mule deer steps into an alpine meadow, before the first cast into a mountain lake or the first cup of coffee beside a small wilderness camp, there's one simple act that begins the entire adventure. You tighten the shoulder straps, you lean forward underneath the weight, you make the first move forward. Everything that follows begins there. And that's the chapter. So that's going to be the vibe of the new book. I've loosely titled it, at least in my head and, in my notes, as Trad Bows and Bivvies, a guide to solo hunting the wild places. But let's talk about this chapter real quick. It's all true what I said, and I've had this exact conversation with my friends. My buddy Stillman, 35-year-old accomplished deer hunter. I refer to him as Cowboy all the time. The guy's a killer. He's great in the mountains, but this year he started reaching out to me. And one of the reasons I wrote this particular article or chapter is because, Cowboy reached out and he said, "Hey, what kind of backpack do I get? I want to go on a backpack hunt." And he and I have actually talked on the phone quite a bit about everything I just read you. It all begins with a backpack. So he went out and he bought himself a Stone Glacier, similar to like what I carry. And then, now we're talking about what is he going to put in it. We talked about a sleep system. He's used to carrying a big, heavy cowboy bedroll. That's not going to work, right? We we talked about what works and what doesn't work, and much of what you put in that pack is not only about weight; it's about volume. How big are things that you're going to carry? How do you put them in your pack? When I first started, I had everything in little stuff sacks, and that's not as efficient as just stuffing them in there. Now, when I get home, I put them back in their stuff sacks. I clean everything and I put it back in a stuff sack. So when I need it the next time, I grab that item. But when I pack it for the mountain, I just stuff it in there. It fills all the small air gaps. It's more efficient, and it actually carries better. Surprisingly, it'll rest on your back better. It carries better. So we just we all start somewhere, and I was telling Stillman today, like you're on the way, right? You're on the way to becoming a backpack hunter. And at 35 years old, he's about the same age I was when I really got into it. I had been doing it for a number of years, on a small level. But about 35 is where I was like, I'm going to start going alone. I'm going to start going deeper. I'm going to start going longer. And so, we laughed. He's right where I was 22 years ago. Practically the same guy. Guy's a very accomplished rifle hunter. He's a good bow hunter. He shoots he shoots our stuff, right? So he shoots Buona bows. So I got to thank him for that. But I'm excited to see what Stillman does. I would really like to. I know he's going to hear this. I would really like to get Stillman on here after he goes on that backpack hunt, and just have him tell everybody his story. So I hope you guys enjoyed the chapter that I'm working on. It is not a complete work, right? It's not. It's not literally polished. It's not finished. It's out of my journal. But it's going to be a chapter. It'll go in the new book. Again, I want to put something out that is a roadmap for guys like my friend Stilly who, want to do it and don't quite know where. And, I found these things out. I started learning this by reading Hunting Open Country Mule Deer by Dwight Shue. It's a great book. It is written in a very classroom, almost textbook style. Not my style of writing. It's not what I enjoy reading the most, but I read it back in the 90s, and I still have my copy of it. It's a great book, and Dwight did an excellent job of highlighting all of the components that are necessary to hunt mule deer in open country. So I would recommend getting that book as well. My book will be, I've got some gear lists that I've already built for it, bullet pointed out, my personal gear list, and then, a recommended gear list. I have an article that I wrote about cold camping with no stove. I've got some food recommendations. I've got lists for food. I've got lists for gear. I have a piece I'm working on in my journal about the last 50 yards. I chuckle. There's a lot of expert mule deer hunters out there giving people advice on, you don't need to take your boots off, or you don't need to do this, or you don't need to do that. And these guys have never killed a mule deer in their bed at single digit yardages. They're great at killing big deer, but they're using compounds, they're using rifles. And, the compound guys that I know, I'm not even hunting when they're killing their deer, right? I'm still making decisions. So for a guy that can kill deer efficiently at 60 yards, yeah, don't take your boots off. But if you're a trad guy, listen to what those guys have to say. They've got a lot of experience. Everything they're going to tell you does not equate to what you're doing if you are a trad guy. Again, compound guys, rifle guys, I rifle hunt. I never take my boots off rifle hunting. Don't need to, right? The last 50 yards from going from 60 to single digits, I take my boots off. I take my bino harness off. I take anything that can rattle, scratch, brush, make any kind of noise. It comes off. So just remember, right? There's a lot of influencers out there that have a lot of great things to say. I do not consider myself an influencer, even though I am telling you what to do right now, which is kind of a little hyperbole there, right? But make sure the people you're following are doing what you want to do. I guess that's the key there. So thanks for following along this far. Thanks to all the guys that voted on my Instagram story. I got 100% thumbs up, yes, or hell yeah, relaunch the podcast. I got not a single person voted, no, it's not for me, dog. So I thank you guys, my buddies on Instagram. I appreciate you guys, following my stuff, liking it, sharing it. For those of you who have already purchased Alone Against the Mountains, my deepest thank you goes out to you guys. I really appreciate you guys. And if you are hearing this and you've got a company that can somehow support what I do and you want to talk about a collaboration, I'm easy to find. So thanks, guys. I'm going to be walking into the mountains here on August 14th, so I will miss a week probably unless I can get something pre-recorded and figure out how to plan it to drop while I'm in the mountains. Otherwise, I'll try to do this every week. And until then, thanks for finding the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the mountains.